Okay, the principles beginning at verse 16. Remember that the principles from beginning verse 1 to 15 talked about the giver. And now we're talking about those who handle the money. Verses 15 all the way, 16 all the way to verse 24. And if you did not write down those principles about the giver, I refer you to previous lessons. We went over them over and over and over again. I'll get a chance to go over them in the next chapter. So, verse 16 and beyond, the principles of chapter 8, verses 16 to 24. Point 1. Money given to the congregation must be handled appropriately. Verses 20 and 21 are passages. Point 2. Reliable people must be appointed by the church to collect and count the funds. Verse 19, verse 22. And not just by the church, but the leadership, the deacons and the elders. This context talks about churches internationally, so to speak, internationally. I hate to use that word, but here in this time, in the beginning of the church age, at a time when the churches were barely being established and growing, so they were in a tight connection with each other. So under the leadership of the Apostle Paul. So yes, they were engaging in giving to each other. But these principles apply also just to the local church in itself. These principles of austerity, or the handling of money appropriately, of course they apply to the local church. Point 3, money must be handled by more than one person to avoid any appearance of dishonesty or misappropriation. So we have several people here handling the money. We already have the mention of Titus. We have the mention of his brother, Luke. And up ahead, we're going to see another brother mentioned, and that's in verse 22. Furthermore, we sent with them our brother, whom we have tested for the purpose of approval in the sphere of many things, many times, as being diligent. But now is even more diligent, because of the great confidence which he has towards you. So there's another brother is going to be mentioned, more than one person. There's actually 3 people. In fact, it's going to be more. In fact, Paul is going to join himself in the journey. He's not supposed to be there. That's why he's sending this delegation, this committee over there. But Paul wants to be in the mix. He wants to show up with the money as the great benefactor to his Jewish brothers. Can you imagine what that's like for Titus and all the other ones? Wait, Paul, you sending me? I'm supposed to be sending the money. What are you doing here? It's kind of like when your boss, he gives you the strict mission. You're going to do this, all right? And you're going to be in charge. Make sure you do these things correctly. And you're like, okay, yes. And then you finally go, and then you find out that your boss is accompanying you. You're like, boss, why did you give me this delegation? Why did you give me this task if you're going to be here doing things for yourself? So, let's not go there too much, but yeah, this is probably a good test for Titus, Luke, and whoever else was there. In Acts chapter 20, verses 1 to 4, we see who was there exactly. Is it Acts chapter 20? We'll go over this later on. Acts chapter 20, verse 4. Yes, correct. Okay. So, point 4. The procedures for handling money must be worked out ahead of time to ensure security and proper administration of the offering. Verse 20 and 21, once again, these words, stelomenoi, pronomen, imply thinking or preparing yourself ahead of time. Stelo in the middle voice, we are taking precautions. I like that. And pronoeo, to think ahead, being careful about something. Point 5. Those who administer the funds are face to face with the glory of God, and they must be well motivated. Verse 19. Verse 19 says, and not just that, but also having been appointed by the local churches as our traveling companion with this grace which is administered by us face to face with the glory of the Lord Himself, and face to face with our eagerness. These things you do face to face with the glory of the Lord Himself. The article here points specifically to the glory. Guess what? Let's go back to the Levitical priesthood, even though we're not under the Levitical priesthood anymore. We don't have a tabernacle, we don't have a temple. You are the temple. Your body is the temple of the Shekinah glory. But think about the priest going ahead and finding himself face to face with the Shekinah glory. He had to do things correctly. Now you, or here the administrators, those who handle the money, are face to face with the Shekinah glory in the handling of this money. So yes, everything must be done appropriately, correctly, with great assiduity as well. Point 6. Those who administer the money are functioning in their spiritual gift, and although they work behind the scenes, they are producing divine good just as any person evangelizing, just as any person doing great deeds, just as any person converting 100 people to Christ, just as any person who's a pastor teaching great doctrine. They are functioning in their spiritual gift just as anyone else. Verse 19 again. Face to face with the glory of the Lord. You are face to face with the glory. Now, we all have the Shekinah glory, but here this phrase implies that you are doing something for the glory. Well, in terms of divine good, obviously. You are doing something that He's watching. Point 7. Yes, point 7. The ones who count the money, the ones who check the money, those who deposit the money, those who do the bookkeeping, the finance committee who spends the money, all produce honorable acts of divine good, which will be kept into account or brought into account at the judgment seat of Christ. So do not have an inferiority complex. Am I not functioning in my spiritual gift? Oh, my spiritual gift just consists of counting money and bookkeeping or whatever. That is your spiritual gift. You are a deacon. You have the gift of administration. Now function in it and do it as unto the Lord, face to face with the glory of the Lord Himself. And point 8. All these men I just mentioned, all these men must have the same mental attitude when functioning in their spiritual gift. If you do not, obviously, it's going to be human good. Okay, so verse 21, we're done with verse 21. Pero no, thinking ahead. Pero no, man, because we are careful to do the honorable things, kana, not just before the Lord, but also before men. This is the principle. The application of this principle is in verse 20. We are taking precautions in this thing, lest someone find fault in the handling of this heavy amount by us. It is a heavy amount, and therefore it's a sensitive situation. Okay, well, we can continue on with verse 22, because we're about to mention another brother, and he's unknown also. I still do not know the reason as to why Paul did not mention specifically the brothers. Maybe just to avoid any danger of them being bribed, threatened, etc. Sounds like a good reason. All you need is to mention one person, the most reliable one, Titus. You know he cannot be bribed. You know he's not going to give in even if you torture him. So just mention one person, him as the authority, him as the token, and therefore that's all they need to know. Titus is going. Okay, so verse 22. The NIV says, in addition, we are spending with them, or sending with them, our brother who has often proved to us in many ways that he is zealous. And now, even more so because of his great confidence in you. Zealous. Zealous. Okay, let's see what the translation says. So, we have this then. Connective, yes, we're going to translate it furthermore. Furthermore. Why furthermore? Because we just mentioned another brother over here, which is Luke. Sunepem samen de, the same construction. And we are sending with him our brother, or his brother, whose praise in the work of the gospel is throughout all the churches, the local churches. Verse 22, furthermore, we are sending with them. So we have the aorist active indicative of sumpempo, the same word we saw in that previous verse I just showed you. Sumpempo, a compound word. Sun plus pempo, plus pempo. Sun plus pempo. And then means to send with. Pempo by itself means to send. Sun with means to send with someone. And so we sent with. This is the aorist active indicative. The aorist tense is constitutive. They sent him already. Active voice is Paul and his team. They produce the action of the verb of sending him. And the indicative mood is declarative. Furthermore, we sent, and then autois here. This is the dative of association. We sent to them? No, with them. Because it's implied in the verb, soon. Over here, in verse 18. Sunapem samen, same verb, but then it uses almost redundantly meta plus the genitive of association with him. It becomes much more personal. His brother. So by verse 21, verse 22, you don't need that soon, it's already implied here. Or you don't need meta plus the genitive plural of autos, auton, with them. All you need is autois, the dative of association. You see how the many cases, the genitive, the dative can be used as have similar functions. Okay. We sent with them. Who? The accusative direct object, the one who's being sent, is the brother, another brother. Don adelphon heimon. So this article points, emphasizes, or highlights a specific brother, a person. Not just a member of the royal family of God, even though he is, but it's a specific brother. He is identified by the article. So, the brother, ours, possessive genitive of ego. Our brother. He's the one that's being sent. And then, we're about to speculate who he is, but before this, let's see his character. We do not necessarily need to know who he is specifically. We do not need to know his name. We do not know. People are always excited about who was it and who did this. Well, sometimes you don't even need to know the person's names, but what you need to know is something about his character. Something about the doctrine inside of him. That's what you need to know. That's what you should get excited about. That's what matters. His moxie, his brains, his stability, his spine. And what do we have here? Because the brother, and then it's a relative pronoun of hon. This relative pronoun of hos, rather, it's in the accusative, singular masculine. And so its antecedent is right here, brother, don adelphon. Why do we know that? How do we know that? Because it's the accusative, singular masculine, just as adelphon, accusative, singular masculine. Our brother, whom, in English we translate whom. In English there's who, and there's whom, and there's whose. If you're going to use good English, who you use when you produce the action of the verb, who hit him. But when you say whom, it receives the action of the verb, whom was tested. If you use whose as possessive, whose house was burned. So it's important also in English that we use the correct forms of English, even though sometimes I miss the boat on these things. So, our brother, whom, because here he's about to receive the action of something. The being tested for the purpose of approval. He was tested for the purpose of approval and he passed the test many, many times in the sphere of many things, many times. So, we do not need to know specifically who he is, but we do need to know that he's a man of character.